I don't know how to explain it, but it was the little things that started to crack the foundation of my marriage. I didn't notice at first. Who would? A glance, a missed text, a sudden change in routine. Everything seemed so small, so easy to dismiss. But in the back of my mind, something was changing. It was subtle, quiet. It all started on a Wednesday. Elisa, my wife, came home from work looking more flustered than usual. Normally, she would walk through the door with a tired smile, toss her keys on the counter, and ask how my day went. But that day, she was different. Her movements were a little too hurried, a little too distracted. "I'm going out tonight," she said, not even looking at me when she spoke. I blinked, not expecting the sudden announcement. It wasn't uncommon for her to go out with friends, but this was different. We hadn't made any plans for the evening, and usually, she would give me more of a heads up. "Okay, sure, no problem," I replied, trying to sound casual, even though something about her tone had already set me on edge. "It's just dinner with an old friend from work." "Don't worry," she added quickly, as if sensing that I might have questions. I nodded. That was all she said, and I didn't press further. Why would I? She had the right to do whatever she wanted, right? Besides, it wasn't like she had been acting suspicious or anything. It was just dinner. It was just her catching up with a colleague. But then came the odd part. I sat there in the quiet of our living room, waiting for her to leave, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling that settled in my stomach. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. I trust Elisa, at least I thought I did. But there was something in the way she avoided eye contact, the way she was so keen to get out the door. I brushed it off as paranoia. But then, as she was about to leave, she hesitated. She turned back toward me, her eyes suddenly serious. "I might be late," she said, a strange urgency in her voice. "Don't wait up." I thought nothing of it. It wasn't unusual for her to stay out a little late. She had her own life, her own friends. I knew that. Still, something was nagging at me. As she closed the door behind her, I sat down on the couch, trying to distract myself. I watched TV, flipped through my phone, and tried to kill time. But I couldn't shake the odd feeling in my chest. There was a distance in the air that hadn't been there before. I couldn't explain it, but it was there, creeping in, slowly wrapping itself around my mind. It was around 9 p.m. when I got the first strange text. "Everything's good. I'll be home soon." I wasn't sure why, but the way the message was phrased seemed off. I had asked her earlier to text me when she arrived at the restaurant. She had never been one to forget such things, but this message felt rushed, as though she had just typed it out quickly before doing something else. And that's when it hit me. She hadn't even told me the name of the restaurant. I didn't know where she was. I didn't know who she was with. In fact, now that I thought about it, she had been vague about everything. I couldn't even picture the old friend from work she had mentioned. I texted her back. "Where are you? I thought you were meeting up with someone." No reply. I waited and waited. Something in my gut was twisting tighter now, gnawing at me. It was a feeling I couldn't ignore. By 10:30 p.m., I couldn't take it any longer. I grabbed my jacket, told myself I was being ridiculous, and decided to drive by the restaurant she said she was going to, if only to put my mind at ease. As I drove through the city streets, I realized I didn't even know the area well enough to know where to start looking. Was it in the old district? Maybe down by the waterfront? I started driving toward the downtown area, hoping I would spot something familiar, but nothing felt right. Every intersection felt wrong. Every street lamp seemed to make my nerves more frazzled. It wasn't until I was almost home again, ready to give up and accept that I was just being paranoid, that I saw her. She was standing outside a bar, one I'd never seen her visit before, her back to the street, talking to a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing, too closely, too casually. She was looking up at him as he leaned in a little too far, too comfortable, his hand resting on her shoulder. I froze. My heart sank. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. There they were, standing in front of the bar, oblivious to the world around them. Elisa, my wife, was standing there with a stranger. Or at least, someone I didn't know. Not someone from work, not an old friend. No, this was something else entirely. I shouldn't have been watching. I shouldn't have been spying. But the image of them together, laughing, so close, was seared into my brain. I watched them for what felt like forever, my thoughts spinning in confusion and disbelief. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, paralyzed, until I saw Elisa turn to walk back inside the bar with him. That's when I finally snapped back to reality. I turned around and drove home, the pit in my stomach growing heavier by the second. As I sat in the driveway, staring at the front door of our house, I didn't know what to think anymore. I had always been the kind of guy who liked to believe the best in people, especially in Elisa. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just witnessed something that shattered the trust one had in her. Something I wasn't ready to confront. She had said she'd be home soon. But what if she wasn't coming home at all? I drove home, my heart racing and my mind running wild. Every part of me screamed to confront her right then and there, to stop her the moment she walked in the door and demand answers. But something inside me told me not to. I didn't want to make a scene, especially without knowing what was actually going on. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe it was just some innocent dinner with a friend. But everything inside me, every instinct, every gut feeling, was telling me I had just seen something I wasn't meant to see. Something I wasn't supposed to know. I sat in the driveway for what felt like hours. My hands gripped the steering wheel, and I kept telling myself to calm down. "You're being crazy," I whispered to myself. "There's nothing here." But even as the words left my mouth, I didn't believe them. I couldn't. The streetlights cast long shadows, and the house in front of me seemed eerily quiet. Elisa was still out there somewhere, with that man, walking into a bar like it was just another normal night. The thought made my stomach turn. I knew I needed to get inside, but I couldn't. I stayed frozen, staring at the house, waiting for some kind of sign, some kind of clarity. And then it came. A text. Just a simple one. From Elisa. "Sorry, I'm running really late. Don't wait up for me tonight." I read it twice. There was nothing particularly unusual about the message, but something about it sent a chill down my spine. I mean, why would she text me that? Was she telling me not to wait up because she didn't plan on coming home soon? Was she trying to give herself an excuse to stay out with this guy? Was it a subtle way of telling me that I should stop worrying? I stared at the message for far too long, each second dragging by like a lifetime. I couldn't reply. What was I supposed to say? I wasn't angry, not yet. But I was confused. The woman I married wasn't like this. She was loving, affectionate, loyal. Or at least, I thought she was. I finally gathered the strength to get out of the car and head inside. The house was still, dark and quiet. I flicked on the lights and sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the phone in my hands. I couldn't shake the image of Elisa laughing with that man. Her smile too easy, too carefree. It felt wrong. Why had she lied to me? Why hadn't she mentioned this dinner in more detail? I scrolled through my phone absent-mindedly, trying to distract myself from the growing pit in my stomach. But my mind kept coming back to that moment outside the bar, the way she had looked at him, the way she leaned into him as they talked. I replayed it over and over in my mind like a broken record. Was I just overreacting? Was this a misunderstanding? I couldn't make sense of it, and that drove me mad. It was nearly midnight when I heard the familiar sound of the front door opening. I didn't know if I was relieved or terrified to hear it. Elisa stepped inside, her movements quick and quiet, like she was trying not to wake anyone up. The faint smell of perfume clung to her clothes. "Hey," she said, her voice softer than usual, almost as if she was trying to be casual. But I could tell it wasn't working. I didn't say anything. I just watched her, waiting for her to say something more, something that would explain everything. She glanced at me briefly, then quickly averted her eyes, as if she didn't want to see my expression. "Elisa," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I saw you." She froze, her back stiffening. I could see her shoulders tense, her hand slowly sliding off the doorframe as if she didn't know how to respond. The air between us felt thick, heavy, as if something had shifted that neither of us could ignore. "What do you mean?" she asked, but I could tell she already knew what I was talking about. Her voice was shaky, like she was trying to play it cool, but I could see through her act. "I saw you with him," I said, a little louder now, my hands gripping the edge of the table. "I saw you outside the bar, laughing, too close, with some guy I've never met." She stepped back, her eyes darting away. The silence stretched on longer than I could handle. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. I had to keep it together. "Elisa, who is he?" I asked again, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why didn't you tell me about him? Why are you acting so weird?" She exhaled sharply and walked past me to the couch. I watched her move with a strange sense of detachment, like she was too far away to really reach. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my thoughts swirling with confusion and hurt. "I wasn't sure how to explain," she said softly, her back to me as she sat down. It's not what you think. I could feel my frustration growing. Not what I think. What did she mean by that? How could it not be what I thought? I had seen it with my own eyes. Then tell me what it is, I demanded, my voice shaking despite myself. Tell me what's going on, Elisa. I'm not stupid. I saw the way you were with him. She sat there, silent for what felt like an eternity. The tension in the room was suffocating. Then, finally, she spoke again, her voice barely audible. It's Jason, she whispered. Jason. The name didn't ring any bells. I had never heard of him before. My mind scrambled to place the name, but nothing came up. Jason who? I asked, now completely on edge. Elisa, who is Jason? How am I just hearing about this guy now? Why is he so close to you? But all I got was silence. And then, with a slow exhale, she turned her head, and I saw it. The guilt, the hesitation. It was all there in her eyes. Whatever was happening, whatever was between her and this Jason, was something I wasn't a part of. And it hit me then, hard. I wasn't just losing her. I was losing the life I thought I knew. The words she spoke didn't register at first. Jason. That name felt like a foreign object in my mind, something I couldn't grasp, couldn't understand. I stared at Elisa, trying to process what she had just said. She seemed so distant, like a stranger sitting across from me, someone I didn't know. But the name echoed in my head like a drumbeat, growing louder, impossible to ignore. Who is Jason? I repeated, my voice growing tight, almost desperate. Why are you so evasive about him? Why didn't you tell me anything? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she just sat there, her hands folded in her lap, her face drained of color, her eyes too tired to meet mine. There was something about her silence that made my stomach churn. She wasn't even trying to convince me. She wasn't attempting to smooth things over. She just sat there. Elisa. I pushed again, my patience running thin. I saw you with him. You were laughing, standing so close. Don't lie to me. She finally let out a deep sigh and looked up at me. Her expression was one of resignation, as if she had been holding something back for so long that it was starting to spill over, no longer able to stay hidden. He's an old friend. From when I worked at the marketing agency before I got the job here, she said quietly. We lost touch for a while, but we started talking again recently. We've been catching up, talking about old times. I swallowed hard. Old times. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of her explanation. So that's all it was. But it didn't feel like just catching up. Not when she was out with him on a Wednesday night. Not when she was standing so close to him, her body language screaming something I didn't want to see. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice shaking. Why keep it from me? Why didn't you say anything about meeting up with him? I didn't think it was important, she replied, the words coming out in a rush. It wasn't like that, really. I didn't want you to get the wrong idea. Jason and I. She stopped herself, her hands tightening into fists on her lap. What? What didn't you want me to think, Elisa? I pressed, now standing up, the frustration building. My mind was trying to keep up with the whirlwind of emotions, but the more I tried to understand, the more it felt like I was being lied to. Her gaze dropped to the floor. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want you to think that I was doing something wrong. I didn't want to make it a big deal. You should have made it a big deal, I shouted, my voice cracking with the weight of everything I was feeling. If it was nothing, then why didn't you tell me about it from the start? Why did you keep it hidden? The room felt like it was closing in on me. Elisa's silence was suffocating, as if she was waiting for me to give up, to stop asking, to stop pushing. But I couldn't. Not after everything I had seen. Elisa, I saw the way you were with him. I said again, this time softer, but no less intense. You were laughing with him. Laughing. And you don't laugh like that with just anyone. That wasn't a casual dinner between friends. She flinched at my words, and for a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. But it wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was something else. Something darker. I could feel the walls between us growing taller, the distance stretching further apart with every second that passed. I don't know what you're trying to say, Elisa said finally, her voice shaky, but her eyes avoiding mine. I'm not doing anything wrong. I let out a frustrated breath, pacing around the room. It was like talking to a wall. She wasn't hearing me. She wasn't listening. And worse, I was beginning to realize that she might not care anymore. Whatever was happening with Jason, whatever this was, it wasn't just about him. It was about us. It was about the trust that had been broken, even before I'd caught a glimpse of the truth. But I wasn't ready to give up. I couldn't. Elisa, I don't know if you're lying to me, or if you've convinced yourself that this is okay, but I need to know the truth, I said, my voice rising with a new intensity. I need to know what's really going on here. What is Jason to you? For a long time, she said nothing. Her eyes flickered, like she was debating whether to tell me more, whether to let the walls come down. But there was nothing left in her silence now. I wasn't the person she had married anymore. I was a stranger asking questions that she didn't want to answer. Then, in a soft, almost hesitant voice, she spoke again. He's more than a friend, she admitted, barely audible. We used to be something else. Years ago, before we met. I stopped moving, my heart sinking into my stomach. Something else? Before we met. I could barely process what I was hearing. My mind was racing, trying to catch up with the reality that was unfolding in front of me. All this time, all this years together, and Elisa had been hiding this. Jason wasn't just some old friend from work. He was someone from her past. Someone who had meant more to her than I ever realized. Her words cut through the air like a knife. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was stare at her, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had built a life with, telling me things that felt like they were tearing everything apart. What do you mean, something else? I asked, though I already knew I wasn't going to like the answer. Her eyes met mine finally, and in them, I saw something I wasn't prepared for. Regret, yes, but also something else. A deep, hidden truth she had kept locked away. He was my first love, she whispered. Before you. And we had a history. I thought I had moved on, but when he contacted me again, I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know what I was feeling. The world around me seemed to tilt on its axis. I was speechless, my mind trying to make sense of everything she had just said. But I wasn't prepared for the rest of her confession. The words that would shatter the image of everything I thought I knew about my wife. We kissed tonight, Elisa added quietly, her voice trembling. And with that, the foundation beneath me crumbled. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The words Elisa had just uttered were like a slap to my face, leaving me stunned and disoriented. We kissed tonight. The phrase echoed through my mind, reverberating in every part of my body, but I couldn't process it. I stared at her, wide-eyed, my breath coming in shallow gasps as the truth began to sink in. A part of me wanted to scream, to shout at her, to demand that she take it all back. But I couldn't. I just couldn't. The room felt like it was closing in on me. My body was frozen, locked in place, unable to move or speak. Elisa sat there, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite decipher. Was it guilt? Shame? Or was it something darker, something I wasn't ready to face? She didn't look at me directly. Instead, she kept her gaze cast downward, like she was ashamed of what she had just confessed. And maybe she should have been. But I couldn't escape the feeling that there was more to this than she was letting on. Why now? I thought. Why after all this time? Why didn't you tell me about him? My voice was shaky, the words slipping out in a soft, strangled whisper. I couldn't hold back the hurt anymore. It was like a dam had broken inside me, and I couldn't stop the flood of emotions that came rushing forward. I didn't know how. Elisa replied quietly, still not meeting my eyes. Her hands were clenched tightly in her lap. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want you to feel like I was going back to him. But when he reached out, I didn't know what to do. It all came rushing back, all those feelings I thought I had buried. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. I never meant for this to happen. It was supposed to be innocent, just catching up. But then, we talked, and one thing led to another. I couldn't stop it. It just happened. The silence between us was suffocating. I felt like I was drowning in it. My mind was reeling, spinning with 1,000 questions. How long had this been going on? Had there been more than just one kiss? Were there other moments? Other meetings? I needed to know. I needed answers. But part of me was afraid to ask. Part of me was afraid of what I would hear. Elisa. My voice cracked as I said her name. I couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't know what else to say. I didn't know how to express the overwhelming sense of betrayal that was coursing through me. All this time, I had trusted her completely. And now, everything felt like a lie. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could control it, but I couldn't. I shook my head, my chest tightening as I struggled to keep myself together. This wasn't just about a kiss. It wasn't just about a fleeting moment of weakness. It was about everything. It was about the lies, the secrecy, the betrayal of trust. It was about her going behind my back, doing something I never would have imagined in a million years. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, with things we were both afraid to say. I wanted to understand, but at the same time, I didn't. I wanted to forgive her, to move past this, but how could I? How could I ever look at her the same way again? I wanted to leave. I wanted to walk out, to get away from this suffocating room, this suffocating situation. But I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, trapped in my own thoughts, unable to escape the reality that was slowly setting in. Finally, Elisa spoke again. This time, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I never stopped loving him," she said, her words so quiet I almost didn't hear them. I thought I had moved on, but I never really did. I tried to bury it. I tried to bury him, but he was always there, in the back of my mind. The confession hit me like a punch to the gut. I staggered back a step, feeling like the ground beneath me was giving way. It was worse than I had imagined. She hadn't just been physically involved with him. She hadn't just been caught up in a fleeting moment of weakness. No, it was deeper than that. She had carried him with her all this time, even after everything we had built together. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. The tears I had been holding back threatened to spill over, but I fought them. I couldn't cry. Not yet. I needed to keep it together. "Why did you marry me?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. The words were hollow, like they didn't belong to me, like I didn't even recognize my own voice. "Why did you choose me, if you still felt that way about him?" Elisa looked at me, her eyes filled with so much pain that it almost broke me. "Because I loved you," she said, her voice trembling. "I still love you. But I didn't know how to stop loving him too. And now I'm so lost. I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am anymore." I didn't know how to respond to that. How could I? What could I say? All the things I thought I knew, all the trust one had built my world on, were crumbling in front of me. I had spent so much time believing in something, and now, it felt like everything had been a lie. "Do you still love him?" I asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she just sat there, her eyes filled with regret, and I could see that she was wrestling with something inside herself. I wasn't sure if she was trying to protect me, or if she was trying to protect herself. Either way, her silence was more damning than any words she could have said. "I don't know," she finally whispered. And that was it. The truth, raw and unfiltered. In that moment, I realized that the person sitting across from me was no longer the woman I had married. She wasn't the woman I thought I knew. She wasn't the woman I had trusted with my life. She had become someone else, someone lost in the past, someone caught between two worlds. And I had no idea if she was ever going to find her way back. The silence between us was suffocating, heavy with everything that had been unsaid. I sat there, feeling like I had been ripped apart and left to bleed on the floor, unable to even speak. Her words echoed in my head. "I don't know." I didn't know what to do with that. How could she not know? How could she not know whether she loved him or not? Wasn't that something you either felt or didn't? But maybe she wasn't lying. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe she had been living in some kind of fog, caught between two worlds, one where she loved me and one where she loved him. The thought was unbearable, but I couldn't stop imagining it. I looked at Elisa, sitting there with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes pleading with me. She was waiting for something, waiting for me to say something, to make it all make sense again. But I couldn't. "I don't know what to do with this," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "I don't know what to do with you. With us." My chest tightened as I said it. Every part of me wanted to believe she was still the woman I had married, the woman who had promised to love me for better or for worse. But how could I? How could I look at her and see that same woman when I knew she had been hiding something so deep, so painful, from me all this time? "I never wanted to hurt you," Elisa said, her voice cracking as she spoke. "I didn't know how to make it stop. It's like I'm torn between two versions of myself. The one who loves you, and the one who still feels for him. I don't know how to reconcile that. I don't know how to fix it." I could hear the pain in her voice, but it only made things worse. The guilt, the confusion, it was all there in her eyes, in her every word. but I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. Elisa, you don't get it, I said, my voice low and tight with emotion. I've trusted you with everything. And you've been lying to me. You've been hiding him from me, from us. How am I supposed to forgive that? How am I supposed to believe in anything we've had? She broke down then, her body shaking as the tears started to fall. She reached out for my hand, but I pulled back, unable to let her touch me. It wasn't anger anymore that I felt. It was something worse. Betrayal. Deep, soul-crushing betrayal. I felt like I was watching the woman I loved slowly slip away, becoming someone else, someone I didn't recognize. I'm sorry, Elisa sobbed. I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I could control it. I thought I could push it down, but every time I saw him again, every time we talked, it just brought everything back. I've been lying to myself. To you. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to undo the hurt I've caused. I stood up then, my hands shaking. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't stand seeing the woman I had trusted, the woman I had loved, crumble before me. I had to walk away. I had to get out of this room, out of this house, before I said something I would regret. Elisa, I don't know if I can do this, I said, my voice low and steady despite the storm brewing inside me. I don't know if I can be here anymore. I don't know if I can be married to someone who doesn't know what she wants. I could see the panic in her eyes, the desperation. She reached for me again, but I took a step back. Don't, I said, my voice sharper now. Don't touch me. I need space. I need time to think. I turned and walked out of the room, the sound of her sobs following me as I made my way to the front door. I needed to breathe, to get some air, to get as far away from her as I possibly could. I couldn't be in that house, not with her, not with the way things were now. The night air hit me like a cold slap, but it didn't do anything to numb the pain. I walked aimlessly down the street, my thoughts a whirlwind. Every step I took felt like a step further away from everything I had ever known. I had always believed in us, in the love we shared. I had always trusted her, trusted that she was the one person in my life who would never hurt me. But now everything had changed. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. I didn't know where I was going. I just kept walking, letting the cold air and the pounding of my heart drown out the chaos inside my head. Eventually, I found myself at the edge of the city, standing in front of a small, darkened park. I didn't even remember how I had gotten there, but it didn't matter. I needed to think. I needed clarity. I sat down on a bench and pulled out my phone. I knew I couldn't go back to the house just yet. I needed space. But even as I sat there, the weight of what Elisa had told me still hung heavily on my chest. She still loved him. She still had feelings for him. Was it possible to rebuild from this? Was it possible to come back from something like this? Or had everything between us already been shattered beyond repair? I ran my fingers through my hair and closed my eyes, the uncertainty of the future overwhelming me. I loved Elisa. I wanted to believe in her. But how could I ever trust her again? How could I ever look at her the same way? The phone in my hand buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from Elisa. I'm sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Please don't give up on us. I stared at the message, the words twisting inside me. Please don't give up on us. But how could I not? How could I ever move forward from this? I didn't know the answer, and I wasn't sure I ever would. But what I did know, deep in my gut, was that the road ahead would never be the same. And no matter what happened next, nothing would ever feel the same again. The cold breeze continued to bite at my skin as I sat on the park bench, staring blankly at the pavement. The message from Elisa still burned into my phone screen, but I couldn't bring myself to read it again. I knew what it said. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Please don't give up on us. She was desperate, clinging to the remnants of whatever we had, but I couldn't see how anything could be fixed. Not after everything. How could she expect me to just forgive her? How could she expect me to move on like nothing happened? I ran my fingers through my hair again, feeling the frustration building. Every possible scenario ran through my mind, each one more confusing and painful than the last. What could fix this? Could it be repaired? Could we somehow go back to what we had before? And even if we could, was it worth it? Would I ever feel the same way about her again, knowing that she had carried another man's love into our marriage? I stood up abruptly, the movement driven by some desperate need to escape the suffocating weight of the moment. I walked in no particular direction, letting my feet take me wherever they wanted. It felt like I was being drawn to somewhere, anywhere, away from my thoughts, away from the mess that had become my life. But no matter how far I walked, I couldn't outrun the reality that Elisa had just dropped on me. I thought about the kiss she had mentioned. It was like a knife, twisted deep into my chest. I couldn't stop imagining them, her and Jason, together, laughing, touching, sharing a moment I should have never known about. The fact that it had happened tonight, the same night she had left me with nothing but questions. The timing felt deliberate. Had it been a one-off? Or was this the beginning of something much worse? I couldn't stop picturing her, standing in front of the bar, so close to him, like she had forgotten I existed. Was I the fool in all this? Had I been blind to the cracks in our relationship, the small things I had ignored over the years? I had always believed in us. I had always trusted her. But how could I trust her now? By the time I found myself standing on the edge of the city, overlooking the lights that flickered below, I was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. The clarity I was hoping for never came. Instead, I found myself circling in the same thoughts, trapped in the same confusion. I heard the faint buzzing of my phone again, cutting through the stillness of the night. It was another message from Elisa. I almost didn't want to look at it. What was left to say? What else could she say that would make any of this better? I unlocked the screen, half expecting the same plea for forgiveness, but this message was different. Shorter, almost colder. I've made my choice. I felt my heart stop for a second. The words hung in the air, and I couldn't breathe. Was she talking about me? Had she made a decision between him and me? I could feel my pulse quicken as the implications of the message hit me. She had made her choice. For the first time in what felt like forever, my mind went blank. I read the words again, but they didn't make any more sense the second time. I've made my choice. What did that mean? Was she choosing me? Was she choosing Jason? And if so, what did that mean for the future we had built together? I didn't know how long I stood there, staring at the message, trying to figure out what it meant. My mind was too clouded with emotions to make sense of anything. I didn't want to believe she was choosing him, but a part of me already feared that was what had happened. She had always said that Jason was her first love. What if that was the love she couldn't let go of? What if everything I thought was real was just a lie? I turned away from the city lights, the familiar landscape, now feeling foreign and distant. The question gnawed at me, refusing to leave. Had I been enough for her? Had I ever been enough? Or had I always been second choice, waiting in the wings while her heart was still tangled up in the past? I sent a quick reply, my fingers trembling as I typed the words. What do you mean? Tell me now. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to know the truth. The raw, unfiltered truth. There was no more room for half-truths, no more room for secrets. I needed to hear it from her. I needed to understand what was happening before I lost my mind. The response came faster than I expected, almost as if she had been waiting for me to ask. I'm leaving tonight. The words hit me harder than anything else she had said. She was leaving. She was actually leaving. The woman I had spent my life with, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was walking out the door. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't comprehend what I had just read. She's leaving me. The realization felt like an earthquake, shaking the very ground beneath me. I dropped my phone to the ground, my legs giving way as everything around me started to spin. My mind couldn't catch up with the reality of the situation. Elisa, my wife, the woman I trusted more than anyone, was leaving. And it was because of him. Jason, the man she had never truly let go of. I stayed on the ground for a while, lost in the dizzying confusion, my thoughts racing in 1,000 directions. My mind couldn't settle on a single thought. How had it come to this? How had we arrived at this moment where everything was falling apart? I finally stood up, my body trembling, my heart heavy in my chest. I needed answers. I couldn't just sit here, waiting for something that would never come. I needed to face this head-on, whatever the cost. I grabbed my phone, my fingers still shaky as I typed out one final message. Where are you? I hit send, knowing this was the last time I'd hear from her. The last time she would be mine. And then I waited. The response came quickly. I'm at the train station. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think. I just ran. The weight of Elisa's words pressed down on me like a physical force. Each letter, each sentence leaving a mark on my chest. She was at the train station. The finality in her message hit me harder than I expected. I didn't know if she was telling me to come or if she was just letting me know that it was over, that this was the last thing I'd hear from her. But I couldn't sit here, unable to do anything. I couldn't let her walk away without hearing me, without understanding the devastation she was leaving behind. I didn't waste time thinking about it. I grabbed my keys, slammed the door behind me, and made my way to the car. The engine roared to life, the sound filling the quiet night air, but my mind was numb. Every part of me felt like it was operating on autopilot. The drive to the train station felt like it took an eternity, the streets blurring by, each second making the knots in my stomach tighten even more. I didn't know what I was going to say when I saw her. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I had to get there. I had to see her. The train station appeared on the horizon, its bright lights flickering in the distance. I pulled into the parking lot, my breath coming in short, shallow bursts. I could see the faint outline of people moving in and out of the station, commuters coming and going. But I didn't care about them. I was looking for Elisa, and I knew the moment I saw her, I would know whether or not there was anything left of us. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the entrance, the cold air biting at my skin. My hands shook as I shoved them into my jacket pockets. My heart was pounding, my chest tight with dread and anticipation. The station felt unusually quiet tonight, the hum of activity seeming to disappear with every step I took. And then I saw her. She was standing by the ticket counter, her back to me, her figure outlined in the soft glow of the station's lights. She was dressed in the same coat I had seen her in earlier, the one she always wore when she wanted to feel like herself. But there was something different now. The way she held herself was different. She was no longer my wife, the woman I had shared a life with. She was a stranger standing in front of me, making the choice to walk away. Elisa. I called her name, my voice cracking as the weight of everything settled in my chest. The words sounded foreign coming from my lips, like I wasn't even sure it belonged to me anymore. She turned, slowly, as if she had been expecting me, but hadn't known what to expect from me. Her eyes met mine, and for the briefest moment, I saw a flash of pain in them. A fleeting look of regret, but it was gone as quickly as it had come. I didn't think you'd come, she said softly, her voice barely audible over the noise of the station. She was trying to sound casual, like she was in control, but I could hear the cracks in her voice. I didn't want to drag this out. I didn't know what to say to that. She didn't want to drag it out. She was the one who had been dragging us through this mess. She was the one who had made a choice, a decision that I hadn't been part of. She was the one who was leaving, and she was telling me she didn't want to drag it out? I took a step closer, my voice trembling with every word. You didn't think I'd come? You're leaving, Elisa. You're just going to walk away? She looked down at her shoes, as if the weight of her own actions was too much for her to bear. She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. It was like she was struggling to find the right thing to say, but nothing could change the reality of the situation. I don't know what to say, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do anymore. I thought I could make everything work. But I can't keep living a lie. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when I know I'm still tied to someone else. I can't keep pretending that I'm not in love with him. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I had already known, deep down, that she was choosing him. But hearing it out loud, hearing her admit it, made everything feel so much more real. The woman I had shared my life with, the woman I thought was mine, was walking away, not just from me, but from everything we had built together. I loved you, I said, the words coming out raw, painful. I still love you. But you? I had to stop myself. I couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't want to. It hurt too much. I know, she replied, her voice thick with tears. I know you do, and I love you too. But I've been lying to myself for so long. I never stopped loving him, and I thought I could just ignore it. But I can't. I can't keep pretending like you're the one I want when he's the one who's been in my heart all this time. I was standing in front of her, but it felt like she was a million miles away. My mind was spinning, my heart aching with every word she spoke. I wanted to reach out to her, to tell her that we could make it work, that we could fix this, but I knew that wasn't possible anymore. Not after everything. Elisa, I began, my voice hoarse, but she cut me off before I could say anything more. Please, she whispered, her eyes filled with tears, don't hate me. I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted this. But it's happening, and I can't change it. I stood there, frozen, as the truth sank in. This was it. This was the end. She had made her choice, and there was nothing I could do to change it. I was standing in the same place, but the woman I loved was already walking away, leaving me behind. "You're leaving with him, aren't you?" I finally managed to say, my voice breaking. She nodded, unable to look at me. "I am. I'm sorry." I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know how to respond. All I could do was watch her walk away, disappearing into the shadows of the station, with him waiting for her on the other side. I stood there for a long time after she was gone, the weight of her departure pressing down on me. I had thought that love was enough to hold us together, that trust and commitment would carry us through anything. But now I knew that love wasn't always enough. Not when the heart had already chosen someone else. And as I stood there in the cold, watching the empty tracks ahead of me, I realized that the life I thought I knew was gone. Elisa was gone, and I was left standing in the ruins of what had once been my everything. I stood there, the cold air stinging my skin, feeling utterly lost. Elisa had walked away, leaving me standing in the shadows of the train station, her figure disappearing with every step. I had never imagined that this would be how it ended. I had spent so much time trying to hold on, thinking that if I loved her enough, if I tried hard enough, things would somehow work out. But they hadn't. Not this time. As I stood there, a deep sadness settled into my chest, but there was also something else. A spark of something I couldn't quite place. A feeling that, despite the pain, there was still hope. A realization that maybe this wasn't the end, but rather the beginning of something new. I took a deep breath, letting the chilly night air fill my lungs. I couldn't change the past. I couldn't change what Elisa had chosen, but I could choose how I moved forward from here. I could choose to let go of the anger, the heartbreak, and instead focus on what lay ahead. I had spent so long defining myself by my relationship with her, but now it was time to redefine who I was on my own terms. For the first time in what felt like forever, I took a step back from the weight of everything that had happened and asked myself a simple question. What do I want? I didn't have the answer yet, and that was okay. It was okay to not have everything figured out. I didn't have to have it all together right now. What mattered was that I had the chance to build something new, something better. And maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be with Elisa. Maybe it would be with someone else. Or maybe it would just be me, learning to love myself again, learning to find happiness on my own. I walked out of the train station and into the streets, the city's lights illuminating the path ahead. It wasn't as dark as it had felt moments ago. The world still turned, people still walked by, and life kept moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope, of possibility. I spent the next few weeks focusing on myself. I took up old hobbies I had neglected over the years. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in too long. I started spending more time outside, walking through the city, breathing in the fresh air, and remembering what it felt like to just be. I even started taking up running, a way to clear my mind, to get rid of the anger and sadness that still tried to creep in when I least expected it. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to heal. The rawness of the betrayal started to fade, replaced by a sense of peace I hadn't known I needed. I wasn't the same person I had been when Elisa and I first met, and maybe that was a good thing. Maybe I had grown stronger, more resilient, through the pain. I had learned that I didn't need to depend on anyone else for my happiness. I had the power to create my own life, to build something worth living for. One evening, while walking through the park near my apartment, I saw someone sitting on a bench, reading a book. She looked up as I passed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a familiar warmth in someone's eyes. We smiled at each other. Nothing forced, nothing complicated, just a simple, genuine connection. Her name was Anna. We started talking, and our conversation flowed easily, like two people who had known each other for years. There was something refreshing about it, about the simplicity of the exchange, the ease of being with someone who wasn't part of the past, who didn't carry the weight of broken promises. We agreed to meet up again the next week, and then again after that. Slowly, but surely, I found myself looking forward to the future again, to the possibility of something new, something that wasn't defined by old mistakes or old heartbreak. It wasn't love right away, but it was something else, something that felt real, something worth exploring. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that maybe love wasn't something I needed to find in someone else. Maybe it was about finding it within myself first, about learning to live a life I loved on my own before inviting someone else into it. Elisa's departure, as painful as it was, had opened a door. It had shown me that I could stand on my own, that I could rebuild and move forward. I was no longer the man defined by the woman who left me. I was me, and I had everything I needed to be happy. In the end, I didn't find closure from Elisa's choice. I found it in myself, in the strength I had forgotten I possessed. And with every step I took toward a future I was starting to shape, I knew that the road ahead, while uncertain, was mine to walk. And for the first time in a long time, I was walking it with hope in my heart. Life had a way of surprising you, and sometimes, the things you thought would break you could be the very things that help you rebuild.